Hey man, it's Phil X, and you're watching Guitar Tales with Dave Cohen. And Guitar Tales, guitar tales. Like, what else do you need, right? Guitar. We're geeks, nerds, gear, inspirations, positive vibes. Look out.
Geeks and nerds, if there's any area where I have street credibility, it is that. Thank you, Phil X. I am a geek and I am a nerd. And I have to say, when we were playing our intro there, I was very proud to see in our virtual green room our great guest tonight, Joe Normal, actually kind of vibing a little bit to the John Doe and Generics tape from 1987. So thank you, Scott Guitar Mr. Stengel, for putting all of that great stuff together, the intro, the eventual outro, getting us hooked up with a great guest, Joe Normal. We're going to learn all about him. And I would like to thank, as I always do every week, our sponsor, Mischief Studios, headed by the great Charles Larita, who is a guest of ours in season 1 here on Guitar Tales. Great music, great equipment, lessons, everything you need. Check out Mischief Studios. And without further ado, and with a second thanks to Scott for setting us up with him, New Jersey legend, Joe Normal, who is a fabulous musician, who has stories to tell about backstage at Van Halen, who has an album coming out, who is kind enough to be coming from the West Coast to chat with us. Joe Normal, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, what's up, Dave? Thanks for having me.
We are really happy to have you. And am I right? Were you really vibing to our intro music?
Yeah, it definitely was. I looked into a little bit, like, what is that song, And it's like somebody's demo, right?
That was penned by me. Oh, look at Scotty's laughing. That song was penned by me, although our season 2 guest, Todd Yasui, claims to have co-written it with me. And on bass, here's a little trivia for you. Leonard Bernstein's nephew, Mike Bernstein, was our bass player.
Oh, wow.
So he's playing bass on it. It's just a little clip from that song that we recorded all the way back in 1987.
Yeah, it sounds like, like most of our bands, we're just jamming and just kind of rocking out and, just want to grab the mic.
Well, so far you gave me a proud Guitar Tales moment. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
So you were joining us from the West Coast. You're in LA, somewhere in a cool ass town of LA.
Yeah, I'm in LA. Yeah.
And are you doing anything fun out there?
Just, surviving, just working it, recording, playing, just doing my thing.
Oh, that is great. I mentioned recently, I was just out there a few months ago, and I just love that town.
LA's it's got a lot going on, like the music business has changed over the years,
Right.
It's kind of like, we came out here when it was just like totally kicking ass, like back in the 80s.
Okay.
I've kind of built a life here and I'm settled here. But like you guys have Asbury and that's where it's happening, man,
It really is. I'm embarrassed to say that I probably had a 25, 30-year absence from having gone to the Stone Pony. And I've been there a couple of times recently to see Liz Roberts of Girl Bossa Nova out there. And then we saw the great Matt O'Ree and his band. But literally 25, 30 years I hadn't been there. And I forgot how amazing the Stone Pony is. And Scott plays there all the time. And it's legendary.
Yeah, totally is. Yeah. House of Independence, over at the Paramount Theater over there and stuff. And, they do the Light of Day stuff there each year. I've been out there for that a couple times. And, what always amazes me, and I forget this, is the level of musicianship is just the tops.
It's insane. It is insane. So you just gave me a great question. I've spent a fair amount of time in LA. That same guy who co-wrote the song with me lives out there. And so I have a little bit of a feel for LA culture. Not a lot, but a little bit. So as you're sitting there in LA right now, do you feel this level of longing and nostalgia for the authenticity that is Asbury Park.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think like LA is a film town, you know, it's very image
Yeah,
conscious, you know.
right,
So
right.
like LA, like when it comes to like music, everybody's thinking about their look first and their image and their,
Yeah,
you know, they use the word brand now, but it's
yeah.
just,
You got to
it's
brand
image,
yourself, right?
you know. But
Yeah,
like it seems like back east, like it starts with the music and then you develop the rest of that, you know. And
yeah,
that I think that's what I miss is just, you know, finding people who look cool but can play really great too. And you know,
yeah.
it's not as common in LA. You know, you got a lot of
No,
great bands here,
right.
but you know,
There is. I think everyone I've met in LA, and a fair amount of folks I've met there, who are transplants from the East Coast, they're all happy there, but
yeah,
they miss our grittiness.
right,
They miss our down to earthiness, which is not
right,
really a phrase, but there's something about it. And I'm saying all this hot off of I just listened to the whole Bruce autobiography on tape.
yeah,
And it really, you know, I grew up in Matawan, so I'm a Monmouth County boy originally. But you know, that really brought me back to back then what Asbury was. You know, he's still 15 years older than I am or so.
yeah,
But even, you know, the later years, it's still, you know, you go to Asbury right now, even the culinary scene is artistic, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I don't know. I was always eating backstage food, so I wouldn't know.
Oh, that's right, right. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you're talking pizza, that's a whole other story. You
Oh,
know?
there's yeah, and I've had this discussion with my kids. You know, like they're my kids travel all over the place. There is no better pizza than Jersey anywhere, as far
Yeah,
as you know.
that's true. Yeah, and bagels. I don't know if I haven't had a Jersey bagel in a long time, but like I grew up in Elizabeth, and we used to have on Elmore Avenue there was this Snoopy Bagel shop, the best
Right.
bagels in the world. You know, and
Yep.
then like any pizza place that you walk into there has the best pizza
Oh,
anywhere.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And I don't care what they say on Barstool with the whole Hartford, Connecticut, a pizza. No,
yeah,
no. Jersey blows away Connecticut with their pizza.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Dave Portnoy, that's what I'm thinking of. You know, I
yeah.
actually watched that whole pizza thing, and no, Jersey beats them. So you grew up in Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm from Elizabeth. You know, my youngest years were in Bayway, and then before I turned a teenager, we moved to Elmora.
Where's
And
that?
to Elmora is like if you're on, I don't know how to describe it. It's like kind of in the center of Elizabeth, towards
Oh, okay.
like between like North End and I don't know Bayway.
Right. I got you. I got you.
It was like a step up from Bayway.
There you go.
You know, and then it's a step down into North End, and then you're in Newark, you know.
Right, right.
But,
And people from outside of Jersey don't even know that Newark Airport is in Elizabeth, right?
right, yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
Everyone
the
thinks it's
borders.
Newark.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Newark. You know, Budweiser factory.
Yeah.
You know, Routes 1 and 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got all that stuff up there. Now, did you ever live in Asbury, or was that just where you sort of
No,
participated?
you know, like my first like real like exposure to Asbury was when I was going back there playing with Dramarama. If you guys are familiar with the band Dramarama, another Jersey band, I was helping out quite a few shows, filling in for Marky or for Pete on guitar, and we would do shows. We'd go back there and play uh, several dates. And the big thing that we would do was the light of day concerts. And I couldn't believe it. It was like the Sunset Strip was in the 80s, where it's like people are there for the music, they're there for the scene, for the
Right.
nightlife, and you know, also they're there to support the cause and that. But it felt like people were genuinely there for the music and to support the acts and the artists. And I don't know, I haven't seen that since like the late 80s, early 90s in LA. And then to go back there uh, to Asbury, which I don't know, I just thought of it as a beach town, right? I knew the
Yeah.
history of Springsteen and that whole thing, but like being from Elizabeth, like that was a million miles away from the scene that where we were. Like we were more attached to like New York City
Oh,
and
yeah. Right.
and North,
CBGBs and all
yeah,
that.
yeah, Gildersleeve, CBGBs, the Bowery, you know, all those things, St. Mark's Place, and like Asbury to me was like we didn't go that direction. We went mostly north, you know,
Yeah.
and or across the water. So for me, going there with Dramarama was my first real exposure to it. I thought, man, this is great. It's like, we got to come here and try and be a part of this. And like I was saying, like I consider myself sort of bi-coastal, and I try to get there when I can. And I realize that, hey, I'm from here, and people here appreciate the kind of stories that I tell and the music that we make. And, so I've kind of like put some effort into kind of bringing some of that more into my style.
Yeah,
because like I was saying, like being in LA, people think, oh, he's an LA guy, 80s glam rock or something. But I started I started back there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when we start unpacking, which I guess we could do right now. I watched and greatly enjoyed Small Town Factory, your video.
Thank you.
And here's what I think was really cool, because you are tough to categorize, as an artist. In a good way, you're tough to categorize. And one of the things, I love the song. The verbal imagery was great. It was catchy. And then one of the things that I picked up on that you did with the video, you made the factory a character in your video, not just your song. Yeah. And I thought the way that worked, and we'll put a link at some point in post so people can find your video. But it was really beautifully done, and I love the way you told your story, not just through the music, not just through your lyrics, but through showing us that character, that factory. And I thought that there was a gutturalness about it that did immediately make me think of Springsteen in his younger years, but not precisely. It's Joe Normal. It's right. Not, it was very cool.
I appreciate what you have to say about the video. My dad worked in the factory. A lot of our dads worked in the factories. Our parents did. And for us growing up wanting to be musicians, and me personally seeing my father, who was like a trained tenor singer, he was just an amazing singer, that he had to sacrifice all that to work to support his family. So to us, the factory was like this place that we dreaded. It was like the final destination for our lives if we don't succeed in this thing that we want to do, So to me, the factory was this overwhelming presence, this hung over our town. In Elizabeth, we have the Singer Factory, which has been there for like 150 years. And it looks like a Willy Wonka factory or something.
It does, yeah.
So like, to me, it has a lot of personality. It has a presence and a sort of character to it, and all the lives. You think about all the people over the years that walked in and out of there, and their stories and their sweat that is just like in the bricks there.
Yeah,
like, where does that go? Right. It's kind of haunting, and so like when I think of the factory, like that's how I sort of see it. I wanted to sort of encapsulate a little bit of that in the video.
I think you did. Yeah. I thought it was really special, and I think, and I guess now I'm confirming, I understood. I thought in the moment that I understood what you were trying to convey, and you did. I mean, it came across.
Thank you. And at the same time, there's this beauty there, because without that factory, we wouldn't be here. That was the livelihood that it was given to our parents, and so we're grateful for this thing. But it's like, it's there.
Well, there's pain, right?
There's a pain associated. Yeah, exactly. And we grew up in the shadow of that factory, and then like my father, who got laid off in his mid 50s. Was an unskilled worker. What's he going to do with the rest of his life? He couldn't. He never recovered from that. And so, in Elizabeth, we have Wilson Jones, which was where he worked in the big factory there over like borderline Linden.
Okay.
And then there's the refinery, and I think the Siemens mattress company was over there in Elizabeth. There's quite a few buildings and quite a few places where our parents worked.
Yeah, and it's funny, when we watch The Sopranos, you have the turnpike cutting right through Elizabeth,
right?
In the intro to that show.
Yeah. I've seen that many, many times coming over the Goethals Bridge. From Staten Island. And I'm always amazed by the sign, and I tell this to everybody. New Jersey welcomes safe drivers. So in LA, where people cannot drive to save their lives, it's like,
No, they cannot.
I'm that guy who's all calm behind the wheel, and while everybody's like all road rage and shit.
Oh, it is. Yeah, LA. Oh my God, the 101, everything.
Yeah,
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 it is rough out there.
yeah. It's like 8 lanes wide, and everybody's trying to change lanes at the same time.
Oh, they're so
It's
angry.
just chaos, man.
And
Yeah.
I've done it. You get on one side, but in about 20 feet, you have to get to the other side, and no one will let you through.
Yeah.
It is stressful driving out there. I do not like driving out there.
It took me a long time to realize why, like when we first came to LA, was I always getting lost every time we got on the freeway. Like, the 101, like, I don't know if people know this, but like odd number freeways run north and south, and even number freeways run east and west. But when you get to LA, the 101 will say 101 west, 101 east. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I would constantly get lost because I realized that the 101 is heading north, and then it turns, and then it goes back up. So that little part there, like in the San Fernando Valley, North Hollywood, I would always get lost there, and I could never figure it out. And then I was like, oh, I had to look at a map to see it. This is before GPS.
I know. I've gotten lost there too before GPS, and all the canyon roads out there. Yeah, I was there in the one of the Malibu fires and got trapped out there for a little bit.
Yeah, the fires. Right.
Yeah, they're pretty rough. Oh, look at it. Scott wants to get us a drink. All right, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. If you get us a drink, get a mug. Here we go. I stink at this. There we go. A Noise Network mug. We have a merch store so people can buy from Noise Network. So, all right, let's go back in time a little bit if we could.
Sure.
So I love, first of all, I love your purple guitar, but I want to go even before that. How old were you when you first picked up a guitar, and what led to it?
My first instrument was piano, and then drums, and then guitar. Guitar, I was self-taught on guitar. I had a little bit of piano lessons growing up, and then like junior high school, I played the drums in the school band. I played timpani. I auditioned as a piano player, but I wasn't good enough. but our teacher, his name was Mr. Berger. He was the best, and he like worked the shit out of us. And his big thing was the drum section. So he saw that I had rhythm. He's like, you know what? We need a timpani player, Joe. I'm going to have you come in, and then, we'll work you up on the piano. And I ended up playing like bells or xylophone and stuff eventually. But those are my first instruments, but like I was a Beatles fan growing up in the 70s. Paul McCartney was huge, and I already was familiar with the Beatles and stuff. And there was a picture probably like around 1964 65 Beatles, and I liked John Lennon. When I picked up Lefty on the guitar and I saw John Lennon, and I was like, no, he's holding it the other way, so I switched.
That's amazing. That is amazing, by the way.
I could have stayed Lefty, and like McCartney, but just like Lennon was kind of my first maybe guitar. I don't know if I would call him a hero necessarily, but the first like maybe person I was aware of that was like the guitar player in the band. And kind of the way that worked for me was when I knew that I wanted to play guitar, I started drawing pictures of it, and I would hang them on my wall, and I had this wall full of all these guitars that I drew. And my grandfather called one day, and he was on the background strumming some guitar that he got. One of our cousins. My grandfather, and he didn't know how to play. He was like singing some drunken Irish tune or something.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, Pops has got a guitar. We got to go over to Grandma's. We got to go see this guitar. And then he died like a week later. And I remember just begging my grandmother, Grandma, can we have that guitar? It would really help us to grieve, kind of sprinkling it a little bit with sadness, but like, I really wanted that guitar, So my grandfather's name was Joseph. So he was kind of my namesake, and, they were always supportive of the music. And I can remember playing piano at the house, and my mom would have us play on the 4th of July. That was his birthday. And she would open the windows of the house while we would play piano, so my grandfather could hear us, because he loved musicians. He was a bartender.
That's beautiful. Okay.
He worked at the Schuler's Tavern on Bayway Avenue in Elizabeth his whole life. Before that was Keating's Grill in Linden. But that was his life, was being there, supporting the musicians that would play, and the patrons there. he was kind of like what they would call like the poor man's psychiatrist, you
I
know.
love that. That's a beautiful memory for you, I would think. To
Yeah.
just think about him. Yeah.
My grandfather, my namesake, Joseph, his guitar went to me. He spent his life working in a bar, and so did I, but from the other side of the counter.
Yeah, that's
know?
right.
And
That's
like when I
yeah.
made that connection a few years ago, and I thought, man, this is like such a beautiful story. I got to start writing this into my songs and kind of
Yeah.
imparting that into the music. So that's kind of where guitar started for me. That was around when I was in junior high school. I was going to put another guitar out for you guys to see. It's an old Univox that my friend Paul, who I grew up with in Elizabeth, we walked like 5 miles to Rondo Music out in Union on Route 22 one year when we were like 9th graders, and he put his money in his shoe and he bought this guitar, and we used to learn songs on it. He gave it to me a few years ago as a gift, and I cherish that guitar. I played it on a few of my songs on the record and stuff too.
Wow, that's a great. I'm going to stop you there. That is a beautiful story. And here you are, a little later in life, and that guitar that took you guys on a 5-mile walk with cash in a shoe,
yeah,
and then it ends up on an album.
Yeah, it's sort of
yeah.
It's like the only sort of link that I have to those early days.
Yeah.
As we got older and we're really pursuing the band thing harder, like in the 80s, we sold everything to go to London with the band, so I didn't take anything. I had to take like 2 pairs of underwear and a pair of socks and a guitar, and we got one-way plane tickets. Well, we can get into that, but like, I don't have any of my first guitar or any of that shit. So when Paul gave me his old Univox, it was like, yeah, here's like, I can hold on to this and kind of be transported back to that time and remember how bad we wanted this, how hard we practiced all those records. Like there was no YouTube. I mean, you were picking up the needle or rewinding the cassette to learn your solos and the guitar intros and all that shit. And, we worked harder to learn back then. And I think
it was harder.
I think that's like part of how you develop your style, because like you get to a certain point where you can't figure it out, so you got to make it up. And
right.
I think about all like the guitar heroes coming up in those days. They're all different because they all learned differently. And now like you just go on YouTube and, most likely you're going to probably see the same 5 guys teaching you, and everybody's learning the same thing from the same guy. And it's kind of, you lose a little bit of the individuality, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. We've had this show for 4 years now, probably 60 shows under our belt. That insight of yours is the first time that's come up, and I think it's really interesting. I even, I advertise that I'm crappy on guitar. I'm a mediocre guitar player. If you're being generous, I'm a little below that. But
well, you got somebody like Phil X opening your show. I mean, everybody's mediocre.
Yeah, he's pretty damn amazing. But I think if I want to learn a song, I can. It's so easily accessible that I can actually pick someone who has the easiest way to play that song that I want to learn. But you're making me remember back in the day what you said. You'd have a cassette, you'd listen. There's no video. You're not looking at anything. And I'm one of the legions of garage band guys who couldn't read music, so that didn't help. And then you sort of figure out a way to play it that it, for me, it was within my skill set. But for someone who's a little more advanced or a lot more advanced like you're figuring it out in a way that's consistent with your playing style and personality. And I think you're right that, I think almost everyone agrees the best songwriting we've heard came from the 70s. But I bet, when you talk about the 70s and the 80s for playing, before we had the advent of YouTube, I think it forced people to develop, you're right, it forced people to develop a style more consistent with who they were as musicians.
Yeah, like I would always figure out like the first, the intro to the solo, and then we get to a point where I would lose my patience trying to figure it out. So I'd fill in the rest with my own shit, and then I would end it the way the solo ended. You get it like a song like Stairway to Heaven, da, 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 and then the rest is Joe, and then da, 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 at the end,
That's right.
But that's all I could do. I don't know. I couldn't like get it from my ear to figuring out how to put it in my fingers, you know. So you would make it up, you know, you had to envision it in some way that it would make sense to a listener, to yourself, the listener, you know, and then to other listeners.
Right. And by making yourself happy, you'll then be able to musically emote to make your audience happy.
Yeah.
You know, and what I like about that, I'm just loving this because, you know, we've talked about everything and this has never come up, is that you're learn to use the Stairway to Heaven example. And every guitar player learns it at varying levels of not professionalism, of ability. Yeah, but you know, then because we have to fill in the blanks, all that we're really doing is Jimmy Page is helping teach us about song structure and playing, so that we could then each develop on our own. Whereas today, I mean, I can't even imagine if you were to, you know, pull out your iPhone right now, open the YouTube app, and say how to play Stairway to Heaven. I bet there's 1,000 or more.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be an interesting number to look at. How many, you know, either tens or hundreds or thousands of people out there would be teaching us how to play it. So that's pretty cool. And I don't know if there's a fix to this, because I mean, God knows, even we are attached to our computers and smartphones and all that. But for the people coming up, it's like that on steroids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like a crutch, you know. And
yeah,
like I have a couple theories about it. I call it revenge of the nerds, you know, like guitar, you know, rock and roll is from the waist down, you know, and for years, like, you know, it was I don't know, like a ballsy dominated music. Yeah. And then the 80s come and all this tech starts to come in, and then suddenly it's like computers, and like now the nerds are winning, you know, and it's like gone is all the balls and everything is tech now, and it's like
you're right,
how to edit on the computer. And it's like I can make this joke, I call it revenge of the nerds, because it's like
that's a good point though.
The balls have been like sucked out of rock and roll, and it's all done on a screen now, and it's like all the tech guys won. You guys won.
You're right. You know, we have something on our website. I know Scott chimed in on it. So we had a really cool show in, I think, season 2 or 3. We had a panel discussion, and we had a great guy, Mooch, from Big Bang Baby on, and he told us a story.
I went to a bar one night, a room down in Atlantic City. This is a true story. This is where I've had it. I was at the end of my rope with music. There was an 8-piece band on stage.
Right.
There was a keyboard player with 2 stacks of keyboards. There was 2 guitar players. There was 2 female singers. There was, of course, bass, drums, even a sax player. And I'm listening. They take a break, and I walk over to the keyboard player, and I say, "Excuse me, are you running samples?" He goes, "Yeah, we are." I'm like, "Why are you here?"
Right.
And he goes, "I don't understand what you mean." I'm like, "I know. That's why I'm asking you." I says, "Why are you running samples? You have a full 8-piece band here." He goes, "Well, it makes it full." I'm like, "Huh, all right, well, listen, have a great night. Here's $1. I put a single on his keyboard and went, "I'm very sorry."
So
yeah, there's enough people there to cover it, you know.
I know.
You know, it's funny, like I've seen something recently. I was out at a club, and like I'm in a position now where I've been without a band for a while, and I want to put something new together. So I've been going out to kind of get inspired, see other people. Sometimes you see other people, and it pushes you to, I got this, you know. But I saw these young kids, and it was just 2 guys on stage, and they had a laptop, and they had like tracks, and like the first response, I had that kind of response you're saying, where it was like, you know what, they were using a computer on stage. Like I would never do that, you know. But at the same time, like something clicked inside of me. I said, you know, they want to play bad enough that they would do that. And it kind of humbled me for a second. I thought, you know, I'm a guy who doesn't have a band right now, and I want to be on that stage. And here are these guys that want it so bad that they're willing to go up there without their drummer and keyboard player and have it on tracks, so they could at least sound close to what they think they sound like, you know?
Right.
So it was sort of like, I could have looked at it both ways there, and I did for a second, but I sort of like, I decided I wasn't going to like, you know, be judgmental in that moment, because I'm a guy who doesn't have a band at the moment, and I want one.
Right.
I've been playing with some other guys, but you know, that's kind of interesting.
That's a healthy inner dialogue. I like that, because you know, it's not even just music. Like in life, every so often, you know, you'll encounter someone and maybe your gut instinct is, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? And then what you did is, you know, you sort of, you know, it could be professional. It could be, you know, why are you in that relationship? It could be a million different things. And you took it to a better level. You took it to a healthier level. And you said, you know, here's a couple of guys who love music, who want to perform music in front of people. And for whatever is going on in their life, you know, they don't have a drummer and a bass player or whatever, you know, was missing in their band. And they're making, you know, a little bit of a compromise. Maybe they're less happy with the track than you were. You know, maybe they go home and they question themselves later that night. What the hell am I doing? Did I ever think that I'd be, you know, that my bandmate would be, you know, an Apple iMac or, you know, or Mac Air. I'm gonna get the word
Revenge
wrong.
of the Nerds. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I know. Now, do you have views about like tube versus modeling amps and things like that?
You know, like my main amp, like when I play on stage, like real stage with the band kind of thing, I have like Fender. I like Fender amps. I have this Blues Deluxe reissue. It's just a 112, and I run 2 of them in stereo. That's like my big. That's when I'm going for like Joe the guitar player kind of sound, you know.
Right.
But like when I'm recording, I don't use that yet. I got this crummy little. It's an acoustic 110-inch digital amp. Like it's not a tube amp. What do you call it? A solid state amp.
Yep,
but it sounds fucking great in the room. You know, the key is don't mic it close. You know, like what I'll do is I'll you know, play the part that I want to record, and I'll move my ear around the room, and wherever it sounds good, I'll place the microphone right there.
Interesting.
And, you know, I could be 3 feet away. I could be, you know, 8 feet away or whatever. And, you know, that's the sound that I want for the song. That's what I do. And I don't know. I'm not like a Marshall Plexi guy. I'm not like, you know, an AC30 guy. I just, you know what, there's a point like, I want to say like towards the late 80s where I realized there was like a road I was on. I was like, I could either like work really hard to be a fucking amazing guitar player, or I could start working on songwriting and be a songwriter. And I thought about that. I was like, you know, there's going to be more, there's going to be more guitar players that I'll be in competition than there will be good songwriters.
Absolutely.
So I thought, I'm going to do, you know, I've got a way that I look at the world. I'm a storyteller. I was already writing. I'm a writer. I write poetry. I write short stories. I already have that. So when I bring that to like lyrics, you know, I understand rhyme and meter and that type of thing and storytelling. So it was like, I'm going to put the love on the songwriting. So towards like the big band that I was in at the time, we were called the Zeros, and we were the purple thing. I still have the purple in my life, but Sammy, our singer, he was the main songwriter in the band, and a lot of what we did was his stuff. So the songs that we contributed or co-wrote never got recorded. So around 92, when we left that band, it was like, all right, now I can really focus on being a songwriter. My brother and I, we were in that band together. So Jimmy and I really like put all our cash in the songwriting bank. And now, like, you know, I go out with an acoustic guitar and sing my songs. You know, I can also back myself up in a recording setting and play screaming solos, or when I play with the band. You know, I admire Bruce Springsteen, who, you know, everybody in New Jersey does. For years, I did not until I understood him. I didn't understand Springsteen until I got satellite radio and I started listening to the Bruce channel. I'm like, oh my God, I missed out on this, you know,
because
I remember like in high school, my friend Leo was way into Springsteen and the River album and before that. And I didn't get it. You know, Candy's Room, I liked Candy's Room. There was something about it that reminded me of like Lou Reed. It reminded me of like a blistering Mick Ronson kind of solo in it. Because I was into Bowie. And, but it wasn't until the satellite radio thing about, I don't know, what was it 6 or 7 years ago that I really started to understand Springsteen.
I jumped very late on that bandwagon too. I grew up 2 towns over from him, and all through high school I couldn't stand. I disliked him, and I was wrong. You know, at least.
Were you into British rock?
Yes, that was the whole thing. Well, you gave me the best segue. 2 things. because as I was running some errands and I had my adult daughter in the car with me, we were on one of your pages. My daughter Hadley is brilliant and a great writer, and she said, "This guy is smart. He's a great writer." So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Hadley. Thank you.
And one of the things that that as she was reading out loud, she said quadrophenia. And we share that. That is my favorite album on the planet. Great movie, great story. Did you ever see the Billy Idol when he plays the bellboy in the live show? Yeah,
that's the best, man. It's just a great. I get chills thinking about it because he was so arrogant, you know. And then Roger Daltrey kicks him in the ass when he's walking off stage. You know, it was the best, you know. But Quadrophenia, incredible movie, incredible. The whole album.
There's not a weak song on it. In 10th grade, we had to read a poem to our class for what was our teacher's? I forgot my teacher's name, Polanowski. And I read "I Am the Sea" and pretended it was a poem. I wasn't allowed to tell her it was a rock tune, so I just read "I Am the Sea." Or is it the beach? The beach is a place where a man can feel he's the only soul in the world
that's real.
Yeah, you know, every time I walk on a beach, I hear those lyrics. So
I play that song. I'll do that song in my live set when I play.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When the last time I was in England in 2018, we were out in the countryside. I was out there with Dramarama again.
Okay.
And there was this older guy who was an old mod. He comes rolling up on his scooter.
A real mod? You met a real mod?
A real mod, and he was like in his 70s, you know, and got to chatting with him, and he had prostate cancer, and he was out on the road with his scooter spreading the word about, you know, prostate cancer in men and that there's support. And I guess he was at some concert, and who's the drummer for Who that replaced
Kenny Jones?
Kenny Jones, Kenny Jones was big in the British community for prostate cancer. And
I didn't know that.
Festival, there was some mod thing that he was there at for. And I got to talk to this guy, and I just have such love for that whole mod thing. And I relate so much to British culture. I was there in the 80s. We lived there for about 6 or 8 months.
Oh, wow.
And I just really connect with that. I mean, my roots are English and Irish anyway. So it's like, you know, there's a genetic thing that you tap into.
Yeah, you'll have a connection to that. And that album, the movie, it really painted such an interesting picture in the mods versus the rockers.
Yeah.
And remember how brilliant Sting was in that role? He was the king of the mods.
Yeah. He was
absolutely
perfect for that role.
Oh my God, he still is. I mean, he's a living mod, no doubt. Well, you've given me a whole bunch of great segues, and you just gave me one right now. So let's hear the story about what brought you to end up on the other side of the pond, as they say.
You know, the band I was in the 80s in New Jersey was called 000s. And, you know, based out of Elizabeth, we were playing all the clubs there, the Dirt Club, Hitsville, the Show Place. There's all these like Jersey clubs, and then New York, CBs and Gildersleeves and stuff. And we kind of got to the top of our scene because we wrote a song and recorded for Howard Stern when Howard was still on AM radio. He was on NBC. WNBC. And Sammy had the song that he wrote, and we recorded for Howard. And Howard started playing it every day. He'd open his show with it every single day. And we kind of started to get known for that. And I don't know what happened. I guess we were hoping Howard would bring us onto some of his live gigs that he would do. Like he would do these like theater shows. And I guess
birthdays and things like that.
Yeah, and he wasn't really interested in helping us out. And it was like we started to get known as the Howard Stern Band, but we were more like a glam rock band, kind of that leaned into a little bit of Alice Cooper theatrical kind of thing. But we had a real like romper room, funny kind of childlike thing too.
Okay.
So it was very colorful and just quirky and funny and vulgar at the same time. And
that's perfect for Howard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess around 84, we got offered a demo deal with Atlantic Records. Jason Flom, who became like the hugest thing in the world in the record business. We did a demo deal for him. It didn't pan out. We didn't get signed, so we released it on our own. And I don't know, we just felt like we got as far as we could in the New Jersey scene. And we admired like Twisted Sister, and we admired the Stray Cats, who we both heard had went to London to kind of get their success. And we thought, we're going to do the same thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Bright idea. We're going to England, So we basically took everything down to English Town and we sold everything that we
English
had.
Town auction.
Yeah.
I know it well. I know it very well. Yeah.
And we got one-way tickets to England, and we got there, and like within a month, we had our first gig, and within 2 months we were like headlining. We were playing the Marquee in London, Wardour Street, and we just kind of immersed ourselves in the London scene. And over there, glam rock had kind of peaked already, like with Hanoi Rocks. Poison, which was on the West Coast out here in LA, hadn't gotten a deal yet. They were still like doing fan mail and stuff. And
oh, really?
A buddy of ours over there, Kelv Hellraiser, was big on the glam rock scene in London, told us about this band Poison out in LA that are going to be huge. And Guns N' Roses wasn't even a thing yet.
No, they came later, right?
But like at a time where like genres were sort of melting together, there was glam rock, there was this sort of goth thing, and punk rock all intermingled with each other.
Yes.
And it was beautiful. I had like punk friends. We had, makeup and wild hair friends. And then you had like, just rocker friends, like that Hanoi Rock cowboy kind of looking thing,
Yep.
Everything was all in this sort of same melting pot. And then you'd be listening to music in the clubs, and they'd be playing Prince and Madonna with The Cure, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood mixed with, Bauhaus and fucking Ziggy Stardust and stuff, and Mark Bolan and T-Rex. Like there was like this real sort of like, I don't know, soup of music that they would play.
It's healthy.
Yeah. And like, as time would go, everything became more and more subgenre and specialty. And like, I hate specialty. It's like, I think what you started out talking about, like what I do and how I'm hard to classify, because like I grew up with AM radio, and you had like R&B, and you had pop, and then you had a Hocus Pocus by the band Focus, which is like a total rock and roll heavy metal instrumental. And then you'd hear Deep Purple followed by, Neil Sedaka,
I never thought of that. AM radio was, what a great incubator. AM radio was, because I grew up on, WABC, right? That's where we would hear most of.
Harry Harrison.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you would get, we would drive to Florida, and we would get WABC sometimes down to the Carolinas, like New York. ABC would go really far back then, I remember. But you're right. You get Neil Sedaka, whose aunt once bought me a Hanukkah present in Florida.
That's awesome.
yeah, that's an interesting one. And then you'd get I guess even back then you'd start to get the Eagles. You had
the singer-songwriters, the Jim Croce's. Was that the seller say, Brandy, you're a fine girl.
That's on my playlist as we speak. And then you'd hear Mood for a Day, not Mood for a Day, Heart of the Sunrise, not Heart of the Sunrise. What's the big song off of Fragile that plays the harmonics?
Roundabout.
Yeah. So you'd hear Roundabout on AM radio back then. Like an 8-minute song. Bands. Yep.
I love the Steve Miller Band. I remember, like you were talking about, like really young and like the inspiration. Where did you get your inspiration? I remember I had the sheet music for Fly Like an Eagle, and there was a picture of Steve Miller on the cover of it playing a Stratocaster. And I thought, it's the guy with the guitar, because I hadn't moved over to guitar yet. But somebody told me, Joe, you look like Steve Miller. And dude, the stars went off in my eyes, man. I was like, I look like a rock star, man. So what was I, like, 10 years old or something? But the seed was planted. Thank you, Steve Miller.
and what I do these days, I have Apple Music, and I'll just say, I don't want to say it too loud because it'll happen, but I'll say, hey, SIRI, play.
Right. Yeah.
And because my phone's right next to me, and that would screw up, and Scott would get mad at me because I'd screw up our audio. But I'll do a Steve Miller channel, and holy crap, when you move even outside of his popular stuff,
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. Like I've sort of
Yeah.
rediscovered, because I own 2 vinyl albums of his, the Fly Like an Eagle and whatever else I own.
Yeah.
But stuff that I never heard of growing up. He's just great guitar player, great songwriter, great singer, or a good singer, I guess. Good singer.
Yeah. Like
Good, more than good enough.
he had his own thing, you know. He wasn't
Yeah.
like virtuoso, but he like produced, like the records were produced in a way where, it kind of had, I think he had a level of artistry, maybe looking back, they might call it pop rock or something, but to us, it's just, or it's classic rock now, but it was like, it's cool shit, like it was thought about, it was thought out. And the guitar sounds and the layering and the vocals and this, he would use synthesizer. And,
he made really intelligent use of synthesizers, because he made his songs very pop friendly.
Yeah.
Even though there's real rock and roll guitar underneath, I'm actually hearing some of the intros in my head right now to some of his songs, because in between every song, you'd have this weird synth kind of either prelude or, something.
Yeah. And it wasn't like leaning into like, I don't know, like prog rock or something.
No, nowhere near it. Nowhere near it.
It was just a sound. It was like using a violin or a flute or something, like, what do you call it? An embellishment or whatever.
Like what's that song? In the Wintertime. Remember that song? In the wintertime. And he had all these ethereal kind of noises going on. But
I know we're supposed to be talking about guitars, but while we're on keyboards, like my favorite like keyboard stuff was Greg Hawkes from the Cars. I thought was an innovator, as well as Richard Wright from Pink Floyd. Those 2 guys were like the innovators in my book as far as piano.
And what's interesting is 2 names that people don't know, right?
Yeah, with
that's pretty
both
cool.
Excellent guitar bands too. Like Elliot Easton from the Cars is like one of my top 5 guitar heroes. David Gilmour before him, Syd Barrett, incredible songwriter and artist. First 2 Pink Floyd albums are my favorite. Everybody knows Dark Side too, and
oh my
The
God,
Wall or whatever.
And everyone you just mentioned, I think, is playing for the song and not for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, there are great guitar players who play for themselves. I mean, look, we worship Eddie here on this show, but Eddie didn't always play just for the song. Eddie played a little, if we're going to call it for what it is, he also played for Eddie. He liked to show off a little bit. And that's partly why he's one of our heroes, because we all aspire, to that. But like in the Cars, none of those leads are playing for anything other than the song.
Yeah, it's like a little mini pocket song within the song, the solo starts and it takes you on a journey and it wraps you up at the end and leaves you off sailing into the chorus or whatever comes next. And
clean and tidy. Yeah.
It's just like a little song within the song. And then his choice of guitar, like the tones he would use, the effects that he would use, everything was just perfect for the music. And so like modern at the same time, but at the same time so classic. When you think about like My Best Friend's Girl, I think the first 2 Cars songs I heard was My Best Friend's Girl and from the first album. But like Best Friend's Girl was like a rockabilly song, and like that's awesome, man. Like, here's like the biggest new wave band in the world, and they're playing like rock and roll.
You're right, and Scott's chiming in. We could look at our screen over there. Neil Giraldo, same exact thing. He is. I mean, he could do as good a solo as anyone anywhere. But
he had like a ferocity, like he had like a real passion in his playing. And those Pat Benatar records are just like smoking solos, man.
We did. I had to play rhythm because I can't do anything. We played Heartbreaker in one of my bands. And Hit Me With Your Best Shot. But he played for the song, and God knows he's someone you could hear even in that he could do, he could do this sort of show offy stuff, but he would play for the song. And you know who else I saw in your bio? You're an Elvis Costello guy.
Oh yeah, the Armed Forces album was where I really got into him when that came out. I remember, back in those days, like this is high school, and my family were kind of working class. We didn't really have a lot of money, and I didn't get allowance like most kids did and stuff. So like I would get money for lunch. I would get like 35 cents a day for lunch money.
Right.
And this is in 1978 or 79. And
Right.
I would save my lunch money. I wouldn't eat lunch, and I would save up enough money to buy an album every like 3 weeks or whatever it was. And I wouldn't just buy an album for a song. I would have to know there were more than one good song on the album.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Armed Forces came out. There was Oliver's Army. Accidents Will Happen. And I heard Green Shirt was on that album. I heard like 4 songs from that record, and I thought, all right, it's time to buy this album.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that was my introduction to Elvis Costello and the Attractions. It's not just Elvis Costello; it was his band too.
Yeah.
The bass playing is the
Oh my
best
God.
fucking bass playing since Paul McCartney. You
Yeah,
know?
and the drums with it, like their rhythm section, and his collaboration with Nick Lowe. Like he knew which songs to take and what to do with them when Nick Lowe would write a good song.
Yeah, yeah. That
You know.
that whole album was great, and then from there, kind of going backwards, and the second album had like Pump It Up,
Yep.
and I think Radio was on that too.
Yeah.
I kind of went backwards to that, and you could hear like the difference in the production. By the time he got to the Armed Forces album, it was like really, really produced, and
Yeah.
like the overall, like they must have had a better budget, or the production was upped.
Yeah.
that record.
His later just high end. The musicianship, the sound quality. I think
Yeah.
he found what his voice needed to be. Because what a unique, interesting, controlled, emotive voice. That he had and has. And I'm gonna thrust another segue upon us.
Sure.
So we're talking about production, talking about albums, and all of that. You have an album coming out called Public Works. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, my album Public Works is out now. What is it? 12 songs, I think. But it's basically about the influences of growing up in the Northeast. It's sort of working class life in the Northeast. There's some themes that run through it, a couple topics in there. It's self-produced. I did it myself. I began kind of during the pandemic when there was no band stuff happening.
Right,
and
right.
I released a few singles at that time, which ended up becoming part of this album. And I just kept going until I had a complete album. And I thought, what am I going to call it? And I always like, having the name Joe Normal, I think just sort of signifies sort of like the every person. And
Yeah.
I like, I used to go by Hutchworks because my last name is Hutchinson.
Okay.
And the idea of music as a body of work. And I like Public Works because the appeal that it's like for everybody. I'm hoping that there's some topics that most people relate to, like summer jobs and, working life and the struggle for survival and stuff. And when I say survival, I just mean, just to make ends meet,
No, I know. And by the way, if anyone's watching right now, pause your screen and we have the QWERTY or the QR code. It'll take you right to everything that Joe Normal has right there. Scott's put it on the screen. So if you pause the show right now, you just take out your iPhone, or if you have a Samsung or one of those, I'm sure it'll work too. And that'll take you to the album and I'm sure many other things. But yep, look at that. Scott said somebody scanned the QR code, so that's fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's good stuff. It's very good stuff. And
I have it like on my website. People still buy CDs. At shows, people buy CDs, and I know people think, "Oh, nobody listens to CDs." Well, people don't buy them to listen to them. They buy them because it's like a souvenir.
Yeah.
They listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and it's available on all the streaming things. But if you like, like a tangible thing you can hold, I have them on my website or whatever. So.
Yeah, I think that's important. We culturally have lost so much in terms of the tactile.
Yeah.
I mean, everything resides in here, and in my personal and professional life, I'll get journals. And I'll make notes, and I like, the feel, and there's something different about it. And if they're listening on Spotify, they could pull up your picture, and look at you. But there's something about the CD, which is, it is the stepchild of the vinyl album,
Right.
But they could hold that and look at you and maybe read some notes. And there's something so much better about that than having it purely digitized.
Yeah.
So. So that's exciting stuff. So we have all the information. Normally I would say it, but we've got your website, joenormalusa.com,
That's
at the
right.
bottom
Yeah.
of the screen. And now let me ask you this, because we're actually coming up, believe it or not, we're coming up on the full hour already.
Wow. Man, that went fast.
It has never failed in 4 years. Every guest we've had, including, by the way, we had an LA producer on who thought he knew. He's a dear friend of mine. Thought he knew everything. He assumed it was about 10 or 15 minutes, and I think we went about 65, and it flew because it's fun to chat.
Wow.
What do you have coming up? What are you looking forward to for the remainder of this year?
I'm working on my next album. I'm kind of set myself a goal to do an album a year and like a holiday song a year.
Oh, I like that.
So in 10 years, I'll have like an entire Christmas album. It's kind of what I'm hoping.
That's a great idea.
But so like that's kind of like my musical ambition, like recording wise. But I do want to get back out there. I kind of want to have a band situation. In the meantime, I'm doing solo acoustic shows. I've got 3 private events I'm doing this week. I want to get out to that Asbury scene and play there, but if I do, I'd like to do it as a band.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like in the works. And then the main thing that I am gearing up for is I'm going to do a rail tour this summer. Towards the end of the summer, I'm going to do an Amtrak tour. I've always wanted to go tour on the train.
Oh, wow.
Part of my thing is I've got a little visual impairment, so I don't drive anymore. And solving that problem with touring has like been an issue for me. And I thought, well, what if I could take the train? I've always wanted to do that, like the Beatles on Hard Day's Night.
That's a great idea.
I actually just saw last night that Neil Young has something he's doing. It said the Coast Tour, and there was a train on his poster. I thought, oh shit, I think he got the same idea that I did. So we'll see what happens with that. But Amtrak has Coast Starlight, and it goes all the way from San Diego all the way on up to Seattle, and you can choose 10 destinations on the way over a month. And I'm going to put that together. And my son Drake is a big train fan, and Drake's 21. Drake has autism. And that's kind of a thing for our family. It's a big thing in our family, and we do all kinds of train activities together. And I thought, what if Drake and I could go on tour together and just have a father and son adventure? And I just play a few shows here or there. Then we kind of geek out on all the Amtrak stuff, and make some videos of it to remember it by. So that's kind of what I'm gearing up for this summer. And if anybody wants to kind of donate to a little film that we want to make of the tour of the train, you can go to my website. There'll be a little PayPal thing there, or on my YouTube, there's a donation link there. In any of the videos, just go to one of my videos. You'll see a donation link there.
Well, that's perfect. We got the QR code on the screen. Same thing right now. Pause our show a little bit, and you could put your phone up to it. That'll take you right there.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting stuff.
Any like merch that you buy, any albums that you pick up or whatever, all that money is going into support whatever tour that we do with this rail thing that I'm gearing up for. So
well, that's exciting stuff.
I'll give you dates for that. I'll let you know.
Well, and if you ever, not if you ever, but when you come to Jersey, look Scott and I up. Scott lives right near Asbury, and I live close enough to Asbury to easily make the 45-minute ride up. So we'd love to hang out with you and watch you guys play.
We have to go get one of these. Everybody, don't forget the mug, okay?
Oh yeah, that's right. Here you go. I'll give you it. Here's our merch. Yeah. We have all sorts of merch there. I'm really bad at that. Noise Network. We have lots of merch. But thank you so much.
Buy us a beer, buy us a coffee today if you're watching.
That's right. That's right.
You have like a link or something where people can do that to support the channel, right?
There we go. Scott's putting it up right now. Buy us a drink. That's right. Yeah. Well, Joe, this has been great. I knew it because we were chatting maybe 10 or 15 minutes, not even 10, 5 or 10 minutes before we started taping. And I knew the show would just fly right by.
Oh, that's cool.
So we do truly appreciate your coming by and doing the show with us.
Thank you. Just real quick, I just want to say, I kind of been looking at some of the shows to get a feel for what you do, and You had Todd Yasui on,
Yep.
who I know because I was in a band with my buddy Anthony Slow Motorcade, and Todd came down and actually auditioned as a singer.
Oh my God, that's great.
then-
I know that, but not you. I knew he auditioned as a singer.
Yeah, like I was helping Anthony out too, and he came down to kind of help out. But and then Dan Neary was on one of your shows, and his dad, Ricky Neary, is from Elizabeth, and Ricky was a bass player when I was growing up that we used to look up to in our neighborhood, and he had made these like light boxes, and this is like in the 70s, and I guess he worked like with electricity or something, made these light boxes. And one day they were out on the curb and he was throwing them out. And I don't know if he just like quit playing bass in a band or whatever. And I saw him and I asked him, "Hey, Ricky, are you throwing these out? Can we have these for our band?" And he was like, "Sure, Joe. Yeah, you can have it."
Oh, that's
and,
great.
And then I see Dan on your show and he's like a blazing, blistering guitar player now too. And that's his son. And it's just kind of like, all the puzzle pieces are starting to fit together, good old New Jersey.
Oh, that is great. Those are some great connections. Really great.
Yeah.
And by the way, Todd, the song you were vibing to, Todd's on drums on that song.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so wild.
Yeah, because we were in a band together in college.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
John Doe and the Generics featuring Michael Bernstein was our band. So we bring it full circle.
That's so wild. How cool is that?
Oh, that is great. That is a wonderful small world thing. Why do I have a feeling this will be a reel?
Yeah.
Scott's nodding.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought those things up. That's fantastic. You put a big smile on my face.
Cool.
So, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it. And thank you, Scott, too.
Oh, absolutely. So everyone at Guitar Tales, thank you for joining us again. Check out Joe Normal's page. Subscribe to anything he does, please, on his YouTube page, on any other pages he has. And while you're at it, hop to our page, subscribe. This way you can find out about all the cool shows we have coming up. And I want to thank again my friend of 40 plus years, Scott Guitarmist Engel, who is our publicist, our booker, our producer, and a million other things. He is absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.